Nothing exists in a vacuum. Everything we do, A, has an impact on the rest of the world, and B, is interlinked with the rest of the world. Karmically, energetically, and even on the very mundane levels of economically. I mean, you look at how many of our economies function, how many of our governments function. And then you look at the ripple impacts of that on other parts of the world. You look at our choices in what we buy, what we wear, what we eat. And then you look at poverty and hunger and pollution and the rest of the world. Well, they're interconnected. So whatever level we look at, everything is connected. So I wouldn't say anything is ever luck, because I do believe in the interconnection of the universe. That doesn't mean that it was planned and plotted thousands of years ago, sitting up somewhere in the heavens, that the universe said, on this date at this time, you're going to have an apple land in your hands. See, to most of us, we've got this idea, either it was predestined thousands of years ago, written in my horoscope, or it was totally random and luck. But actually, there's a lot of other ways of understanding the universe, right? Like, is it luck that you're all being showered with these beautiful flower petals? Right? So, I mean, here we are in a beautiful sacred garden that Pujya Swamiji tends with his hands and his heart and his hands. We're here in satsang. There's a certain wind. It's a certain time of day. It's a blessing, but it's not random. Luck implies randomness. I don't think anything is random. There's a wonderful story, joke that I love of these three guys who are walking through the jungle, and two of them are spiritual, religious people. One of them is somewhat less. And they decide to take a break from their walk, and they sit underneath some trees. And the one who's a little bit less spiritually inclined says to the others, I know you guys really have this God thing, but I have to tell you, I don't buy it. And I don't buy it because if there were a God and God planned things, there would be a lot better planning in the universe. The guy says, look at this. Right over here, we've got these flimsy little vines. Thin, nothing little vines. And on the end of them is what? A huge pumpkin. Like, what can these little flimsy vines, what can they possibly do for a pumpkin? And then over here, we've got these huge trees. Big trunks, big branches. And on the end of them is what? Little nothing mangoes. If there were a God with a planning ability, he would give the big, strong trunks and branches to the heavy pumpkin and realize that he could use the flimsy vines for the mangoes. So out of the other two guys, one of them says, hey, Yad, what you're saying makes sense. I think you're right. The third guy says, I can't explain it, but I just know. I just have faith. And so the three of them close their eyes and they take a bit of an afternoon siesta, and a wind starts. And as the wind starts, one of the mangoes from the tree falls from the wind blowing on it, falls onto the face of the non-believer. And he wakes up with a start. And he says, oh my God. He says, I take it back. This planning is perfect. He said, thank God. This brilliant God put these light 1/2 kg mangoes up in the branches and put those heavy 5 kg pumpkins down on the ground. Because if one of them had fallen on my face, I wouldn't be in very good shape. Thank God it was only a 1/2 kg mango that fell on me and not a big pumpkin. And I love that because so many times in life when things don't make sense, we don't have an explanation, it's so easy to say it's random. Good luck, bad luck, nonsensical randomness. But inevitably, when we're able to step back and have a big picture view, things make sense. We see it in our lives. Not with everything yet. There's plenty of things in our life we haven't yet been given the ability to see the full tapestry of yet. But we've all had experiences, I'm sure, of times when you think that something's random and then you realize, oh yeah, wait, how it all works out. We're coming upon Ram Navami in a couple of days, the birthday of Lord Ram. And I won't go into all the details, but there's a beautiful story of this associated with Lord Ram's birth. And the whole idea of karma or luck. And the story is a story that actually begins with Shravan Kumar. There's a beautiful statue in our central garden areas when you walk, a beautiful statue of Shravan Kumar. Young man carrying on his shoulder what looked like one of the old types of scales. But on one end of each of the scales is his mom and his dad. And he's carrying them on his shoulder on a pilgrimage. And Shravan Kumar's parents were blind. And so he was taking them on a spiritual pilgrimage, carrying them. And along the way, they stop at a hermitage. He leaves his parents in the hermitage. And he goes to collect some water for them from the river. Now, flash over to a whole other world taking place at the same time, which is a king, King Dashrath, who wasn't able to have any children. Now, for a king, children are a must, especially sons, but children in general. But he wasn't able to have any offspring despite his 3 wives. They did all kinds of yagnas, ceremonies for him to have children. Now we go back to Shravan Kumar. So while Shravan Kumar is collecting water for his parents, King Dashrath is out hunting in the forest. He was a good king. We're going to temporarily forgive him the hunting aspect of it and call it just the culture of the day. But he was out hunting and he heard what he thought was a deer. And he pulled back the arrow on his bow, and he fired. And it hit Shravan Kumar. Now when he went to collect the deer, and he saw Shravan Kumar, obviously he felt heartbroken. Oh my God, he tried to pull the arrow out and help him. Shravan Kumar said, there's nothing you can do. My life is draining out of me. He said, but my parents are blind and I've left them in the hermitage. Please go and bring them this water. explain to them what has happened. So King Dashrath goes to the hermitage carrying the water. Now remember, his parents are blind. So as King Dashrath enters with the water, Shravan Kumar's parents are saying, Shravan Kumar, Shravan Kumar. Now what's the king going to do, right? So he's silent. And again they say, Shravan Kumar, Shravan Kumar. And finally the king explains to them what has happened and begs their forgiveness. But how do you forgive someone who's just killed your son in sport? Shravan Kumar's parents curse King Dashrath that just as we are dying of a broken heart due to the loss of our son, so you too will die of a broken heart at the loss of your son. Now remember, King Dashrath couldn't have any children. But this cycle now, this wheel of karma, of destiny, of interweaving threads of a tapestry. So of course, the yagna that King Dashrath does bears fruit. He has not one offspring, but several. We'll fast forward through a bunch of the story. Maybe we'll come back and talk about the rest of the story on Ram Navami. But just to take you to the end where we're talking about these interweaving threads of destiny, karma, tapestries. So Lord Ram is about to be coronated king. He's the embodiment, the epitome of righteousness. Whether you worship him as God on earth or not. Either way, the entire story of Ram is the story of righteousness incarnated. The perfect son, the perfect brother, the perfect husband, the perfect father. And on the day he's about to be coronated, his stepmother says to King Dashrath, you owe me 2 favors. I've got two favors from you. Again, long different story, but she had two favors from the king. And she says, I want one of them to be that instead of Ram, my son, the one from my womb, Bharat, should be coronated on the throne. And 2, that Ram should be sent into exile, into the forest for 14 years. Now you imagine, the happiest day of your life, your beloved son, you're about to coronate him, and you have to actually send him off into the forest. As Ram walks into the forest with his wife, with his brother Lakshman, as he walked off, it was said that as King Dashrath grabbed his heart, and in the time following that, as he was suffering from heart pains, heart attack, broken heart, that he kept calling out Shravan Kumar because he remembered. And I share this story, A, because Ram Navami is coming up and it's just a beautiful story, but B, in our discussion about luck and karma, because you think, God, what bad luck. What bad luck for a king to have to send his son out. What bad luck for Ram. But it wasn't luck. It was interweaving destinies. Threads, the thread of Shravan Kumar. The thread of his parents. The whole tapestry. So, no, I don't believe in randomness. I believe that we are living interlinked, impacting lives. And everything has meaning. And so when it's what you would think of as good luck, and you don't have an explanation, no problem. You don't have to overthink it. Just fold your hands and say thank you to the universe. Take it as an inexplicable blessing. And when you have something that you would call bad luck, just understand, again, you don't have to overthink it. Just take it as something that has happened as part of your tapestry of life. And the question simply becomes, okay, what to learn from it? How to move forward in it? How to get closer to God with it? Because at some point, chances are you'll be able to see how things interweave. Are there anyone here who has a question? Yes.
Hi. Hello. How is possible open the heart again?
You mean when it's been hurt?
Heart. One time it is closed, open again.
Okay. When we get hurt, betrayed, cheated, harmed in some way, we close our hearts, many of us. Now, first of all, the very first thing to do is to actually say thank you to yourself for closing your heart, because it really was just trying to protect you. It wasn't trying to make things worse. It was your psyche, your ego, doing what it knows how to do best, which is protect you. It's not always very wise. It doesn't always have great vision. But its ultimate aim is to protect you. Not your divine you, but the small ego you. It's trying to protect you. So just at least give it a thank you for, doing its best with its limited vision to try to keep you from getting hurt again. And then you have to make a very conscious decision. And the decision is, I am willing to take the risk of getting hurt again in order to open my heart. See, what most of us try to do is we try to bargain. Well, I'll open my heart again if you promise I'm not going to get hurt. Okay, God, I know I need to open my heart, but just make sure I don't get hurt again, okay? So as long as we're bargaining, it's not going to work. Because the universe doesn't make promises like that. It's sort of part of the package deal. You're born, you're going to die. You love, you're going to get hurt. Sometimes it's because someone betrays you, hurts you, lies to you. Sometimes it's because they get sick and die. But inherent in loving, unless we are the one who gets sick and die very early in life, at some point we are going to be hurt through our love. And if you haven't been hurt through love, you haven't loved enough. You haven't taken enough risks of loving. Or you're very, very young. And so you have to really make the inner decision that says, I recognize inherent in the gift of love is pain. Sometimes the pain is just anxiety. They're out, they should be home, they're not home, their phone is switched off or out of range, you're worried. Sometimes it's just that. But there's always going to be some level of pain, of distress in human love. Soul-to-soul love doesn't have pain. You love me, fine. You don't love me, fine. You're alive, fine. You're not alive, fine. Because it's soul to soul. It has nothing to do with the physical body. It has nothing to do with the karmic dramas. But while we love on the soul level, nonetheless, we are walking that experience of love with our human hearts and our human bodies, with our human minds. And there's attachment, there's expectation, there's hope. And where there's attachment and expectation and hope and agenda, eventually we're gonna experience pain. But that's part of the package. And so you need, in order to open your heart, you need to be really clear, okay, God, I'm going to take the risk. Because the only option is to suffocate yourself to death. It's like being in a place that's really polluted, right? I mean, it's like breathing the air in Delhi. So, I mean, you really got two options. Option one is you say, well, I realize how polluted the air is, I'm not going to breathe. I'm going to protect myself, I'm not going to breathe. Well, that doesn't get you very far because then you just suffocate and die. And so you end up, if you are, for whatever reason, prepared or planning to be in Delhi for any period of time, you make a conscious decision that says, I recognize that I'm breathing this horribly polluted air. Nonetheless, it's much better than the alternative of not breathing and dying. And so I'm prepared to take the risk. I need to breathe. And in the same way in love, you say, I'm going to take the risk. Yeah, I realize there's a good chance that there's going to be pain again. But my only other alternative is to suffocate and die. Because when you don't love, when your heart is closed, you're not living. But you may find that it's easier to begin loving non-humans. And so in the early days of healing your hurt heart, it may be easier. You may find it easier to begin loving a pet, loving a tree, loving a baby. Right? You begin easy. The tree's not going to betray you. Pet's not going to betray you. Baby's not going to betray you. So you begin slow. And then slowly you work yourself back up to adult humans with free will, with whom you can experience that beautiful connection of love. And the moment you make that decision, you'll be able to do it. It's only your mind keeping you from it. So take the risk. You need it to live. Any other questions? Yes, you just in the back there.
Pranam Sadhviji. It's really a great honor to sit before your vibrant aura and listen to your precious words. A great blessing indeed. My question is, do we choose to become spiritual or spirituality chooses us? Thank you.
So spirituality chooses all of us because at all of our core, those of us sitting in satsang, those drinking and taking drugs in clubs, those committing genocide, and everyone in between. At the very core of everyone is the divine. And so spirituality, spirit, is the truest nature, that which flows through all of us. So it chooses all of us. However, in order for it to impact our lives, in order for us to benefit from that awareness, from that connection, we have to also choose it. And that requires the mind. And that's where our sanskaras, our impressions, our programming, our patterns, our habits, that's where those all come in. That's what leads some people to become terrorists, others to become just really kind of hedonistic, decadent, kind of eat, drink, and be merry sorts. And it's what leads others to be meditators, satsang attenders, sevaks, is the cultivation of clarity, purity, spirituality in the mind. And that's all due to this beautiful mix of our families of origin, what we got in our childhoods, what we brought in with us from past births, the experiences that we've had, and how we use our free will. How we use our free will. Because we've all got some degree of intellect. How do we use it? What association do we choose? The power of association impacts us also a lot. So all of that is creating the mind structure that's going to choose either to join some, horrible terrorist faction that's harming others, or that's going to just decide to kind of, drink and enjoy my way through life, or that's going to guide me on to something that's deep. In the Katha Upanishad, there's this beautiful teaching of these two paths, right? The path of Shreyas and the path of Preyas. The path of Preyas being the path of just eat, drink, be merry, hedonism, decadence. And it's a path that leads us to have to take birth after birth after birth after birth till we get it right. That leads to suffering. And then there's the path of Shreyas, the path of purity, discrimination, spirituality, clarity, devotion, love. And when we choose that path with our free will, that's the path that leads us to awakening, moksha, freedom. Yeah, so spirituality has already chosen you, every one of you. But now the question is, okay, so who's going to choose it back? That's up to you. Beautiful, and we'll start with your question tomorrow. Okay? We'll take yours first tomorrow. Have a beautiful, beautiful evening. A beautiful day to all of our family joining us from all over the world. And so much love to all of you. I look forward to being together again tomorrow.